Analysis on the situation with Dr. Wang, Associate Professor and Assistant Director at the Institute of Middle East Studies at Beijing's Northwest University of China. Thank you so much for being with us today. How do you think Iran will likely respond to these attacks now? What options does it have?
I think Iran has several options. I think Iran could directly attack the targets in its neighboring countries, because we know that there were many United States military presence, military bases in Saudi Arabia, in the Emirates, in Qatar, in Kuwait, in Oman, and in Bahrain. So even in Iraq. So that's why Iran could target them directly. And also, on the other hand, Iran could mobilize its allies, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, such as the Houthi in Yemen, such as Hashd al-Sha'abi in Iraq, to launch the attacks against the targets inside different neighboring countries. I mean, targets the military presence there, the political establishments there, and as well as the military diplomats and even civilians there. But I don't think that Iran will do this, because I think it would further escalate the tension. And from the rhetorics and what the statements from Iran after the United States direct attack against the nuclear facilities, I think Iran now still keeps a very rational and restrained manner, and Iran still hopes to manage the crisis rather than to escalate it into a new level. But I think the determining factor would be how Iran evaluates its losses. And so we are still waiting and see what will happen next. Because if Iran says, okay, the losses are heavy, I think it will retaliate very strongly. But if Iran says the loss is not so much, I think Iran will still to keep the very rational and restrained manner rather than to escalate the tension.
So these next few hours, the next 48 hours, it's being said, will really be crucial. What do you think is going on behind the doors, behind those diplomatic doors in the corridors of international power? China, we just heard, strongly condemning the US attack on Iran, saying that it violates the UN Charter and international law. What are the chances of regional escalation now, and what are the regional and global powers doing to prevent it?
I think on the one hand, we cannot deny that the regional tension are on the very verge of further escalation, because we know that Iran now has the excuse to retaliate, and Iran still has the very capabilities to retaliate further, not only the targets inside Israel, but also the targets belonging to the United States in the neighboring countries. But that could be the very dangerous one. I think Iran would reconsider very carefully whether or not to launch these attacks directly, or to maybe adopt new manners to try to avoid the possible chances for the further escalation. And on the other hand, we know that international community, China and Russia and other regional countries, all called for peace and all called for rational and restraint, and all hope that to influence behavior of conflicting sides, United States, Iran and Israel, through the enhanced consensus. So that's why I think it offers opportunities for the negotiation and talks. So that's why, as you mentioned, just as you mentioned, that the next 24 or 48 hours would be very crucial, and I think, and we all hope that the peace could come back, and maybe new possibilities would come back.
Indeed, and history tells us that the United States does not win in the Middle East when it engages in this way militarily. Why do you think that they did decide to engage in this major escalation? Why now? And what are we learning about the kind of intelligence that the Americans were operating under about just the level of nuclear threat inside Iran, which the Iranians have always said was not the case, that they weren't developing a bomb? The Israelis certainly convinced that they were. But what intelligence is there that this was a justified attack?
I think no matter what kind of justified excuses the United States has, it has no legal rights to attack the other targets because it's directly violated international norms and regulations. Yes, as you mentioned, the United States always lose the wars in the Middle East when they directly involved and directly engaged heavily. But I think this time it's quite different, because the United States does not and did not heavily engage. It's just attack the targets and then just withdraw. And from the statements and the expression from Donald Trump, as well as other high seniors inside the United States, they just want to stop and they just want to wait for the reactions from Tehran and want to accept the so-called maybe possible concessions from Tehran. So this could be considered as a very new pressure from the United States towards Iran, hope them to make concessions on a further negotiation table. But we cannot say that even the United States did not heavily, directly engage in the war. It should be justified. It still should be condemned, very strongly condemned, because it could further escalate the tension and could lead to the region into a more dangerous scenario. So that's why I think international countries, as well as the international communities, regional countries, should work together to prevent the further escalation, and the United States should further reconsider what could happen next by their own activities.
Dr. Wang, we really appreciate your insights today. Thank you very much for joining us here on CGTN. That's Dr. Wang Jin, Associate Professor and Assistant Director at the Institute of Middle East Studies at Beijing's Northwest University of China. Thank you.